Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, I would like to thank all the guests who have traveled from long distance and made time to come and attend and to present this program to us. Secondly, also all the brothers who have attended and spare some time to come and understand this important event. First of all, inshallah, I would like to just give you the agenda of the program. Inshallah, we'll have fiqh of moon sighting and timetable. Then we'll have science on moon sighting. And thirdly, we'll have question and answer, followed by the dua. My dear respected brothers and elders, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned the hadith, Man ahya sunnati inda fasadi ummati falahu mi'atu shahid. Whosoever revives the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam at the time when there is corruption, receives a reward of a martyr. What is a martyr? A martyr is a shaheed, a person who fights in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gets and dies. That person is called a martyr. What is the reward of a martyr? A reward of a martyr, before the blood drops onto the ground, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives that person. So my respected brothers and elders, this event organized in the spirit of reviving of Sunnah, and the reward is huge. Reviving the Sunnah, the reward is huge. Like I said, the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Often we have younger generation say that scholars and imams, they don't have any information or understanding of science and practical challenges. Today's event, inshallah, will show that that we have scholars who have understanding for both deen and dunya. Both deen and dunya. The days of the Islamic calendar and the timetable are vital as they govern our ibadah. So it is very important that how we go on practicing these particular things which relate to our ibadah, our worship, and it has effect in our worship. And it is very important that we understand the Islamic ruling and science in this matter. My dear respected brothers and elders, again I would like to thank all the brothers who have come here, and it is a sign that we are showing our understanding and our zeal towards deen and understanding the reviving of the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This event is not an event of who we follow. This event is an event that how to revive the Sunnah of Musa. My respected brothers and elders, without any delay, I would like to introduce you our guests who have traveled from long distance. Amongst us we have Brother Kamruddin, who has traveled from York, member of York Astronomical Society and coordinator of Islamic Crescent Observation UK. His day job is engineer with Government Resources Organization. He comes from back home. He comes from Bangladesh, and he's from district Moli Bazar. So inshallah he will be speaking between Bengali too, so for the understanding of our Bengali brothers, inshallah. Second guest we have is Sheikh Mangani, well-known scholar, Imam of Tooting Islamic Center, regular presenter of and panelist of Islamic Channel, and he is active for the reviving of the Sunnah of Musa. Thirdly, we have Maulana Farid Patel, Islamic scholar and Imam in London, and resourcer in the Islamic astronomy. So my respected brothers and elders, these are our guests, and inshallah, at the end of the event, we will have question and answers, and I request all the brothers, and I will also repeat inshallah, that when we do have the chance to ask questions, if we could repeat our question inshallah, so that it is clearly heard. Without any delay inshallah, I will request and pass on to Brother Kamruddin, who will inshallah begin with a small introduction. Jazakumullah.
We're going to go first, inshallah. Sheikh Sulaiman will give his presentation.
Okay, inshallah. So we have Brother Sulaiman, Maulana Sulaiman, Sheikh Sulaiman Goni, who will be inshallah introducing.
رسوله الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب ما خلق الله ذلك إلا بالحق يفصل الآيات لقوم يعلمون. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our sustainer, our nourisher, our creator. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has made us the best of the creation and has given us from the Quran revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam information for all people to witness and to see. So this information is for those that have knowledge about astronomy, for those who do not have knowledge about it. It may in certain places still, for people whom do not even have access to this technology, are able to still start their Islamic month based on the sighting of the hilal, are able to start their Islamic month on the visibility of the sighting of the hilal based on the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi. That you commence your fast with the sighting of the hilal and you end your fast with the sighting of the hilal. That is the simple principle. The criteria of wifaqul ulama, very easy and simple, is that there has to be a naked eye sighting of the hilal to establish the beginning of our Islamic month. And no way you will find it goes against the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. هُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ الشَّمْسَ ضِيَاءً. It is Allah who has made the sun, and the sun gives you brightness. And in the qamar there is nur. Now when we look at this hilal, really it is more understanding what exactly is the crescent. That is where the controversy is. Do we really know what a hilal is? Do we know what a qamar is? What is the difference between all of these? And if that is clearly understood, then many of the problems that you are facing today is based, you can say, mainly because of ignorance and not being aware of astronomy and the phases of the moon. لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ وَالْحِسَابِ. So that you may know the number of months, you know the hisab and the computation. Now Allah Ta'ala informs us in the Quran, الشمس والقمر بحسبان, that the sun and the moon are computed. The sun and the moon are computed. I know this presentation, mashallah, Maulana Farid had presented it, but today I'm just going to simplify it and make it very easy. Brother Qamar can just put for me just the hilal pictures, inshallah. Because we don't want to go into the great complexities, inshallah, we leave this for question time. Just to simplify it, there are those who have greater in-depth knowledge about astronomy. And there are those who simply just need to know, yes, the accuracy of this calculations that has been used not to establish the beginning of the month, but only to negate the false sightings. If the hilal is being established and is being cited, as the great scholar Imam Subki even mentions, then what do we learn about the sighting of the hilal? If it is sighted in one part of the world, Now, inshallah, this clarification, I think this is the most important part that we need to understand, which Brother Qamaruddin, our expert, will explain further. But just to prove from in the light of Quran and Sunnah, that this does not contradict Quran. Meaning, when Allah Ta'ala speaks about the hilal and the crescent in the Quran, it does not speak about يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْقَمَرِ. Allah Ta'ala in the Quran, they do not ask you about the qamar. But the word that is used is يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ. They are asking you about the hilal. So what exactly is the hilal? Most of the confusion is because there is a lack of understanding when exactly a hilal, a crescent, is visible to the naked eye. That is, if that is clarified, I think most of the problems where people are taking the sightings from other parts of the world, are borrowing their sightings and establishing it and blindly following. Given that we have the knowledge, we are an ummah, yes, inna ummatun ummiyah. Does it mean that the ummah remains illiterate? Does it mean that the ummah cannot calculate, cannot read? What does it exactly mean? That when we have this knowledge and the data that is available, and over the many years, if you take probably 15 years, of those scientific research and data, never it has been contradicting the Quran, and never also there is a time over the many years where people have established that it does not contradict the visibility in certain parts of the world. So if, for example, this new moon, which in other words is the dark invisible moon, it is not visible with the naked eye. When does the hilal occur? يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ. So this is what we really need to understand today. And that is the lesson. هو الذي جعل الشمس والقمر الضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب. Allah Ta'ala informs us in the Quran, الشمس والقمر بحسبان, that there are certain knowledge about astronomy which is husban, which is accurate to the second. And Islam, this religion, embraces, does not go against something that is logic, something that is conclusive. So what is the ruling? That this is used as persuasive, meaning the moon orbits around the earth in a predictable way, and the earth orbits the sun in a predictable way. Therefore, there are certain aspects of moon and sun that can be calculated with a very high degree of accuracy. Predictable factors, the conjunction astronomical new moon to an accuracy better than a second, the altitude and azimuth of the moon and the sun from any place on the earth at a particular time, the astronomical moonrise, moonset, sunrise, sunset times at a particular location. Now, inshallah, when then our astronomer expert will give you more detailed explanation for us to clarify. That does any one of this go against the Quran? الشمس والقمر بحسبان. So this moonrise, moonset, sunrise, sunset times. We do our salah every day. Nobody questions, is this exactly the sunset time? Do we go out and look at the sunset? Similarly, the moon sets every month. So when the end of the month comes, because Ash-Shahru, the month of every Islamic month is either 29 or 30 days. So on the 29th day, the sunnah is, like how we do for the month of Ramadan, Sumu li ru'yatihi, we go out and we sight the hilal. And wa aftiru li ru'yatihi, we end the month of Ramadan with the sighting of the hilal. Okay? Now that is no doubt. But this sunnah and this practice is used for all of the Islamic months. It is not only restricted for the month of Ramadan. So how do we establish the month of Rajab? How do we establish the month of Sha'ban? The same criteria, but in Ramadan we do the fasting. So we have to establish every month there is Ayyamul Bid, the 13th, 14th and 15th of every Islamic month to keep the fast. People want to know when is the 15th of Sha'ban, when is Ashura. So these timings, the moon setting sometimes after the sunset of the Islamic month at the end of the 29th, what happens if the moon has set before sunset? Is that knowledge of sunset and moonset, is it accurate to the second? The problem that we are facing, there is already great research, information is easily available, plenty of information that there was in the time, according to the criteria of the Qura calendar, where even if the moon had set before sunset, there was a time it was accepted. There was a time in the calendar when the sun, moon and earth were in one line. That is known as conjunction. It is known as Waqt al-Iqtiran. People have exclaimed that they had sighted the hilal and that was accepted. So now, as the years had passed by, astronomers had brought the information to the ulama. We have ulama al-falak, ulama of astronomy, give the information to the ulama al-fiqh and jurisprudence, and made them realize that there is not a possibility of a sighting of a crescent if the moon has set before sunset. There is no possibility of a sighting if the sun, moon and earth is in one line. Because that is dark, it is invisible. That is not a hilal. And the hilal only exists after. That is, when does it exist? After the sunset. And now the question is, in our recent visit when we went to Abu Dhabi, we even met certain ulama and scholars of Saudi Arabia, where they have also accepted that إِذَا غَرُبَ الْهِلَالِ, if the moon sets after sunset, that is, if the moon sets before sunset, they will reject any sighting. They have revised the criteria that moon set must be after sunset. But the point that we are facing now, is it still possible to sight a hilal if the moon is on the horizon 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? Astronomers are informing us. People who have knowledge. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ. Ask people who have knowledge. Ask people who have dedicated their lives, the experts in this field. If all are unanimous that it is not possible to sight a hilal, if this happens even a 1, 2, 3. Imagine you are performing your salah. After Maghrib you are going out to look for the hilal. Now what about the solar glare? If it is still so bright, the sun has not gone below the horizon, not so much so because of the brightness, still not possible to sight a hilal with the naked eye. So we need to ask questions. When exactly, what we are trying to do is trying to establish a criteria which does not contradict the Quran, which does not contradict the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, just to summarize, we will later on, we'll respect our other guests to explain about our situation in where we are in the UK and why there is confusion when people here in the UK, when we are not citing the hilal. Now if you go to the Wifaqul Ulama criteria, if you go on their website, and very clearly there is a book which we can leave behind inshallah, to include in your reference library, compiled by Al-Hajj Abdul Karim Ibn Musa. It gives some criteria inshallah which you can use, the Wifaqul Ulama criteria. So what we have, people here in the UK, they first establish, the Sunnah is that we first look for the hilal on the 29th. Like when the month of Rajab came to an end, 29th of Rajab, we ask people to observe the hilal. You go out, you look into the sky, you have the astronomical data, you have the information. There are people who don't have that computer, they do not have all of this data. So we do not use this information to establish the months. We don't use it. But we use it as a guide to aid us, to assist us, to ensure that if there is a prediction of a sighting of the hilal, or if the astronomers or if the data is saying that it is not possible to sight the hilal, and if there is 1, 2, 3 people claiming a sighting, then there is a procedure to question, when did you sight the hilal? What was the shape of the hilal? How long after the sunset have you sighted? Meaning many questions. You cannot just take somebody's shahada blindly. You cannot just accept. And what is the confusion? People are thinking that this man is a man of great piety and taqwa. A man who performs his 5 daily salah. Nobody is questioning the taqwa and piety of any person. Nobody is questioning the decisions that is made in other parts of the world where the confusion is. We are living in the UK. Our prayer times are different. Our salawat times are different. Sunset, moonset, sunrise, all are different in comparison to other parts of the world. Now we do not use their timings for our salawat. Ash-Shamsu, the sun and the moon are computed. Similarly, we have to, based on the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is not any evidence to state that you have to synchronize the date and make it exactly as the date of Saudi Arabia. We have nothing against the ibadah of the people when they are going there for Umrah, when they are going for Ramadan fasting, when they are going to Hajj. Nobody is questioning, because there is a qadi, there is a sharia, there is a court, they do the decisions. So we do not question the ibadah of the people there. They are taking the responsibility, but we are responsible. It is an amana for the ai*imma and the imams, for the committees, those people who are the decision makers. Because the people are just going to follow blindly. People, whatever decision you make, then nobody is going to. Now, who has the responsibility? So that is why, when we want to establish unity, there is already this confusion. There is already so many years have passed by. We are looking. In one article we had where Qamaruddin, you have the 2 Eids, why 2 Eids in the UK, we would leave it behind. This has been happening for many years. So that is why we are extremely grateful for the people in Reading making this effort to try and bring people to unite on a criteria which does not contradict the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is what unity lies. Unity lies that you establish your Islamic months with certainty. Sumu li ru'yatihi. Now if you have no certainty, if for example you have the information that there is no sighting of hilal in the end of month of Ramadan, and then people end it with 29 days, and others are going to have 30 days, what is the ruling? The ruling is, do not leave the month of Ramadan except with certainty. That is where the unity lies. Unity lies that you establish your ibadah beginning and the ending with certainty. And in today, the basics is, hilal cannot be seen before conjunction because it does not exist. The moon must not have set, otherwise it is not there to be seen. Sun must have set for a little while, about 15 minutes, otherwise too much solar glare to see the hilal. Sufficient altitude of moon above horizon. Elongation, the angular distance between the moon and the sun from the earth must be sufficient to allow light to reflect to the earth. And all this, inshallah, Qamaruddin will explain all of these. So let's just give you very briefly, simply to simplify it, the Quranic verse, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ. They are asking you about the hilal, ahilla. What is ahilla and why is it plural? Hilal is singular, ahilla is plural. In different parts of the world, they have different setting times, different parts of the world. A beautiful principle, according to even great imams like Imam Subki rahimahullah, and clearly stating, إذا حصلت رؤية الهلال في البلد الشرقية لزمت رؤيته في البلاد الغربية دون عكس. And the details, inshallah, you would learn today. This is clarified. That because one of the questions that people will ask, you are here, yes, why do you take reports of sighting of these countries? Why don't you take report of sighting in one part? Here the hilal is sighted here, we are in the UK, why don't we use their sighting? So the Wifaqul Ulama criteria is, first, we do the sighting in our own locality, and those countries where we share the same dates. If it is 29th of Sha'ban here, and other parts of the world on our east, if there is also there 29th of Sha'ban, then after we have exhausted efforts, we did not sight it, and the criteria is that we will take the report of the sighting of the country on our east of the UK. That will include Saudi Arabia. That will include all these countries, provided that it does not go against the logic and the reason, does not go against the credible sightings. And yes, one of the important criteria is there has to be jam'an ghafir, a large number of people. We do not use one person to start the month of Ramadan and two persons to end the month of Ramadan. In fact, in South Africa, when they do the sighting, they go out in thousands. Thousands go out to see the hilal. So if one person claims a sighting, it goes against the logic, it goes against the reason, it goes against the data, then that sighting, because it is not questioning the iman of it, it will not be acceptable. So understand this simple principle. إذا حصلت, whenever there is a sighting on any country, on our east, those countries on the west, the sunset will be later, meaning the hilal will be easy visible with the naked eye. In the past, it has been found that somebody sighted a hilal on this country, for example, Saudi Arabia, and those countries where, as you go west, the sunset is later, means the hilal, the crescent will be bigger, more hours will have passed, more easily visible, but then you do not get reports of these sightings. On these countries, immediately on the west, that is why it has been clearly indicated why ulama decided that the time has come. People have been following a criteria for many years. Decided to establish a criteria where there is no doubt about the sighting of our hilal and the establishing of our Islamic months. So may Allah Ta'ala, inshallah, later on we will come back.
Yes, we'll come back to question later.
Yeah, so I will just conclude with this hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَاعْتَصِمُوا, the verse of the Quran, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Our aim is not to disunite the people. Our aim is to create a unity, but that unity should not be at the compromise of something that is absolute. We do not want people to feel that now you are dividing the families, now that people have been following, so many years have gone by. But you know in your own area, in your own town, in your own city, that there are two different dates. Whether it is the beginning of the month, whether it is the end of the month. So what is our aim? Is at least have an open mind, understand this issue very clearly, and then work and strive to establish unity on the criteria which all people agree upon based on the Quran and Sunnah, not compromising and not following blindly until, inshallah, after the next two presentations, we hopefully, inshallah, will answer your questions. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم.
May I suggest that, mashallah, you've seen an overview of Sheikh Suleiman Ghani, and I'm sure you will have a lot of questions. If you can note those questions, maybe they will be answered in subsequent talk. And if at the end still they're unanswered, then inshallah you can put them forward. So I'll invite Maulana Farid to give his presentation on the fiqh aspect, and later on I will explain.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. أما بعد، فقد قال سبحانه وتعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم. صدق الله العظيم. وقال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام: لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال ولا تفطروا حتى تروا. رواه البخاري رحمه الله. Now, I just want to take the ideas that Sheikh Suleiman has mentioned and just explain to you a few points about it. Basically, what's important to realize is firstly the reason why we're here. What is the problem that we're facing? Sheikh, if you just leave that on that slide for now, and then I'll talk. What is the problem we're facing right now? Why is there a need to look at how moon sighting is done in this country? And then I'll link it back to what the Quran, the Hadith, and the books of fiqh state about it. So once you understand what the problem is, then you'll see the reasons for the solution. Once you've understood the solution, then I'll give you the reasons for the solution from the Quran, from the Hadith, and from fiqh. Firstly, the problem we have is around the world, you see every single year that there are claims of sightings. Now the sightings, sometimes you see that the first sightings are in Nigeria, sometimes it's in Libya, sometimes it's in Saudi Arabia. There are sightings. And lots of people claim to have sightings and to have seen the moon. But now the question is, do we have a criteria to check whether the sightings are correct or not? As Sheikh Suleiman mentioned, moon sighting is something which is mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says quite clearly that the moon, that Allah Ta'ala has specified clear stages for the moon. So the moon appears at certain places, at certain times, and they can be accurately calculated. That's very clear in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned it time and time again. So now it's the same with salah times. If someone ran to the masjid right now and said, I saw the second shadow, and it's Asr time now, we'll say, no, actually, we can check that. We can check the salah timetable, we can go outside and check for ourselves, and say, actually, it's not Asr time. In the same way with moon sighting, if someone says, if there's a sighting in Libya, or there's a sighting in Nigeria,
or there's a sighting in Saudi Arabia, then again, how do we check whether that is correct or not? And that is what we ulama have done. They've come up with a criteria which is based on the Quran, the Hadith, and the books of fiqh. The muftis around the world have agreed to it, that this criteria will tell us accurately. Obviously, the astronomers have agreed to it as well. And they've said that this criteria, if you follow it, in the same way our salah timetable is accurate, and we can actually, if someone comes to the masjid and says it's Asr time or Fajr time, we can check it against that. In the same way, with moon sighting, if we follow that criteria, then we can actually check sightings against. Because lots of people make mistakes. If we see Allama Shami rahimahullah, he mentioned one occasion where one Sahabi came to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and said, he came to Umar radiallahu anhu and he said he saw the moon. So then he was commanded, go away and wash your face. And he came back and said, I can't see it anymore. Because there was part of his eyebrow that was covering his eye. There was part of his hair that was covering his eye. And he thought that was the hilal. So the question is, in this day, how do we check it? How do we check what's going on? Now, a simple system, before I go into the Quran, is understand clear on the map, the way the moon works, the way the moon moves. It moves from the east to the west. So generally what happens is the moon is born in a particular place. But when it's born, the birth of the moon means when the sun, the earth, and the moon are in one line. That's the stage when the moon is absolutely invisible. It's the dark moon. After that, after a minimum of about 18 or 19 hours, what will happen is the moon will appear. Now when the moon appears, sometimes it will appear on the southern hemisphere, sometimes on the northern hemisphere. And when it appears, then it moves in a westerly direction. So generally what should happen is, if for example the first sighting was in India, then after that, Saudi Arabia will sight it. After that, the other places will sight it. And the next day, the rest of the world will see it. Generally a one-day difference. Now coming back to the problem, is we see that's not the case. We see time and again that people sight the moon in India, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, sometimes one day, sometimes 2 days after Saudi Arabia. Now the question is that if sighting takes place properly, then it shouldn't be the case. First India, first these countries over here would sight it, then Saudi Arabia. And if you speak to the astronomers, they'll tell you that if sighting is done properly, then 11 out of 12 months, India and Saudi Arabia, those areas will have the first of the month at the same time. We've been looking for years on end, and rarely has it ever happened that Eid and the first of Ramadan is on the same day. So what's the problem? The first problem is, comment about the other power. Okay. Now the problem is we've ignored what the Mufassirin have explained of the Quran. Now the Mufassirin have explained quite clearly what a verse of the Quran actually means. Just a second slide, inshallah. Okay. I'm sorry, no, the second slide. Yeah. Sorry. Now, here this verse here, وَالَّذِي جَعَلَ الشَّمْسَ ضِيَاءً, that he's the one, referred to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He created the sun, a torch. Diya means something that gives off light. وَالْقَمْرَ نُورًا, and he made the moon. Nur refers to, it can refer to a light, but here it's in the meaning of al-munawwar, that which is reflected upon, that which is illuminated. So the moon reflects the light from the sun. Now on this verse, if we go back in history, we'll see that the Mufassirin have explained those verses, and they've gone through, what does this mean? What's the system of the moon? And they've explained that, this is from Khazin, where Al Baghdadi mentions, he says the stages of the moon are 28 stages. For every constellation, for every constellation, there's 2 1/3 stages. And the moon every night descends until the 28th night. After the 28th night, then it disappears for 2 nights, if the month is one of 30 days. If it's 29 days, then it'll disappear for 1 night. You're thinking, what's the point of me explaining this? Because this is a principle mentioned by the Mufassirin. So it's saying that if a month is going to have 30 days, then what will happen after 28 stages or 28 days of us seeing the moon, it will disappear for 2 nights. If the month's going to be one of 29 days, then it will disappear for 1 night. Now the question here is, so when we're looking at other countries, seeing if they've sighted the moon, this is something else we can check it against. Has there been 2 nights where the moon hasn't been seen? Has there been 1 night if it's a 29-day month? If we go back and look at what the Fuqaha have said, Imam Zakaria rahimahullah, he mentions quite clearly that he's found, when he was staying in Medina, he found that he saw the moon the night before. He saw the early moon, the last moon of the month. And the next day, they announced that it was Eid. He knew there was a mistake because the Mufassirin from 500 or 600 years ago have specified quite clearly that that's the system of the world. That is how, this is the Sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the way things should be. We move on from here. So, now, what you've got to understand is when you get a chart by the astronomers and they tell you that this is the beginning of the month, this is when the moon will be likely to be seen, this is not something which is against the Quran. We see quite clearly the Mufassirin, the Muhaddithin, the Fuqaha have normally used their terminology to explain things. In the same way here, the 2 nights disappearing, the 1 night disappearing. This is not something new. This is something we should be proud of our deen. That it corresponds to what astronomy and science tells us. It doesn't go against it. It's not like other religions where they teach the world is only 6,000 years old, and then they have to explain away all sorts of other concepts. We don't have to do that in Sharia, because our deen is perfect in terms of science and astronomy. Sometimes science is wrong, but the Quran is never wrong. And the more research scientists and astronomers do, the more they find out that Islam is correct. So this principle by Allama Baghdadi, they found this is absolutely correct. And this is what's important here. Another question, if we can move on, I want to speed up a little bit. If we look at in terms of hadith and the muhaddithin, a question normally comes up. Lots of people say, but we should follow Makkah because the Hajj occurs there. There's a hadith of Tirmidhi where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam states that you should perform Hajj when the people perform Hajj. So that's clear there. But in terms of moon sighting, we find there were occasions when even in Mecca and Medina, Eid were on different days. This is recorded by Mullah Ali Khairi rahimahullah. He mentions this quite clearly. So this is the detail. Let me quickly explain this. So the biographers of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the people who have written the seerah books, have stated that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam passed away on a Monday. Monday, if you just, sorry. Okay, that he passed away on a Monday in Rabiul Awwal. Now, exactly what date that was, no one's really sure. Some people say the most accurate date is the 12th, but it was a Monday definitely. Now, the day of Arafah was definitely on a Friday. We have Sahih hadith to state that quite clearly. Now, the question is astronomically, is it possible for the day Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam passing away to be a Monday and the day of Arafah to be a Friday? And that, if you look at I worked at these charts, and you can look at it. If the 3 months have 30 days, it's not possible. It'll be, the day of Arafah will be a Thursday. If 3 months are 29 days, again it's not possible. To be the 9th of the Hijjah will be a Monday. Again, if it's 29 and 30 days, it won't work. So the Mullah Ali Khairi rahimahullah, he mentions quite clearly. He says this means that it's possible that we'll have a different day in Medina and a different day in Mecca. And the people, the companions didn't, from Medina, they didn't go check in Mecca that when is the Hajj? There's lots of people say this. They say Eid is on a Hajj day. They didn't check that. They didn't say, okay, let's check in Mecca if it's the first of Dhul Hijjah. They didn't do that. The Sunnah is quite clear. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam states quite clearly, Sumu li ru'yatihi, that fast by sighting the moon. And that's important. The reliance on another country can only be done if that criteria is based on the Sunnah. And what you find is, if you look at all the countries, you will find that the sighting is only accurate when there's ru'yata amma, when masses of people go out to look for the moon. This doesn't happen in Saudi Arabia. I was there a few years back. 2 or 3 years in a row I went there. And I spoke to the people there. there is not a culture that people in their hundreds and thousands, as we see in India, as we see in Pakistan, as we see in Bangladesh, as I've seen in South Africa, where in Ramadan, the Hijjah, people go out, look for the moon. And you'll find, if you compare astronomical data, you will find that countries where there is a general sighting, where everyone goes out to look, their dates will always match with the astronomy. Where you have a country where 1 or 2 people sight the moon, you will find there will be mistakes. And that's our experience of Saudi Arabia. Where 1 or 2 people every single year, you'd hear about one sighting from Riyadh, one sighting from here, and they saw the moon. If we've got a cloudy country like the UK, then it's understandable you've got one person that sights the moon. But where you've got a country with clear skies, with very little cloud cover, then actually the case should be hundreds, if not thousands of people should report the sighting of the moon. And that's important. Now, if we're going to the fifth, now the fifth is the way the ulama interpret the Quran and Hadith. So it's not something which is different from Quran and Hadith, it's the interpretation from that. So if we see Fathul Qadir, Fathul Qadir is a very important book in Hanafi fiqh. It's the commentary of Al-Hidayah, where it's mentioned that Ibn Umar mentions, he says it is wajib, it is compulsory that people go out to look for the moon. Now this is the Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. As I mentioned before, if people go out to sight the moon, if people go in their hundreds and thousands, if people go look for the moon, then you will find that those dates that people sight the moon and the astronomer will always match up. The only time of a difference is when 1 or 2 people go. We go out, we revive the Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Imam Bayhaqi mentions the hadith, he says, "Man tamassaka bi sunnatin inda fasadi ummati." That if people hold fast to a Sunnah, in another narration is a person who revives a Sunnah in the time when people aren't doing it, when there's fasad around, then for that person is a reward of a martyr. And this is what we're after with this conference. The purpose here is that not we speak out against other people, that's not the purpose. The purpose here is that we revive a Sunnah. The Fuqaha mention it's compulsory that we go look for the moon. It is al-kifaya, that means that a few people in the community should go out. If we all go out, it's best. We all go out every single month. On the 29th of the month, we go out, we look for the moon. Back home, people do it on a regular basis. This is what's important. If we do that, then we'll find that it will be completely accurate. Now, taking all these into consideration, Wifaq ulama came up with their criteria. Now, their criteria is quite straightforward. And Sheikh Salman has mentioned this. I'll just reiterate this, repeat this, just for our own sake. That first thing, what's important, on the 29th of the month, we all go out and we look for the moon. Very important. It's Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We talk about other Sunnah. This is the Sunnah that people have left. 29th of the month, we go out, we look for the moon. If we sight the moon, then that's the first of the month. If it's a clear day, then it should be a big crowd should see the moon. If it's cloudy, then if 1 or 2 people sight the moon, then it will be accepted. But when it will be accepted? In the same way, when that person ran into the masjid and told us it's Asr time, we're not going to accept it because he says he's seen 2 shadows outside. We'll accept it when we can check it. So we check the moon sighting. We check, was the moon in the sky when that person saw it? If the moon wasn't in the sky, perhaps they saw something else. Perhaps they saw a piece of cloud. Perhaps there was something else in the sky that they saw. So we checked it. Now the question is, in the UK, we have 5 or 6 months of the year where it's extremely cloudy. So what could possibly happen is, we could have 5, if we just follow the local sighting, it could result in us having 5 or 6 months of 30-day months. That could mean we might be 5 or 6 days out of the actual date. So the ulama have looked at that situation and they've said that because of that, we should also look at neighboring countries. So on the 20th, if we don't see the moon, we should go out and look for it. If we don't see the moon, then we check with a country, either Morocco or a country in the east. Have they seen the moon? And also, was their sighting according to Sharia? If it was a clear place, was it a large crowd? If it was cloudy, 1 or 2 people, but again, we're checking it against the data. Because we've found that data to be accurate and according to Quran and Hadith. If that is the case, we'll accept it. And this is the criteria that we've got. Inshallah, I'll take questions about this later. Salah times, I want you to focus on moon sighting for now. I'm just thinking maybe it makes sense for Sheikh Umuddin to explain the science behind all this. And then I'll explain the Salah times after he's talking, inshallah. Go on, with da'wana, alhamdulillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الشمس والقمر بحسبان
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. Respected ulama, brothers and elders in Islam. My name is Kamaluddin. I live in York, and today I'm going to explain the science behind the moon sighting and the Sharia of moon sighting, and how science can help us accurately sight the moon, inshallah ta'ala, so we can revive the Sunnah. And so in my presentation I will cover a few important points. These has already been covered by our scholars here. What is the basis of moon sighting? How many days should the world sight? The moon should be sighted around the world. How do you distinguish the correct sighting from the erroneous one? How do we check that the moon could be visible or not? What parameters the scholars use? And what are the conditions of visibility? I'll give you explain a bit about the visibility maps, which can guide us do the moon sighting accurately, to know when and where to look for the moon, and then I'll conclude with a summary.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسألونك عن الأهلة قل هي مواقيت للناس والحج.
So this ayat already has been explained by scholars, where Allah Ta'ala commands us to look for the hilal to start our months, and it is measuring for the mankind, for timing, and also the hadith that do not fast until you sight the moon, and do not end the month until you sight the moon. Exactly. And whosoever fasts on a doubtful day has disobeyed our Prophet. So as Shah Suleiman said, we have to enter the month with certainty and not in doubt. And it is clearly found in Sunnah that if we are in doubt, then we complete 30 days, even though scientifically the moon might be on the horizon. So you've seen the world map before, east-west, explained by Maulana Farid. The visibility maps actually backs that up. As you can see on this world map, this is based on international dateline. So if the moon was sighted here at the most easterly point, then all location in the west should be able to sight the moon on the same evening. And as it is starting with the same time as the international dateline, the 24-hour of the lunar month will be same as the 24-hour of the solar. So when I say solar day, I mean the 24-hour clock agreed by the international community, starting from the international dateline at that point. So because the moon is always shifts its position from east-west as well as north-south, and it can start sighting from any point. But if it was to start from the same point as the international dateline, then the sighting of the moon will exactly overlap 24-hour that in our clock, and therefore the whole world should sight the moon in the same day, just one day. However, since the first sighting always changes, and it could move east-west by any amount. So if, for example, the first sighting started, say, in the Middle East here, then the first 24 hour of the lunar date will overlap over 2 solar days. So say from this point to the end, the 12 hours, and the next 12 hours will be the next day based on the international dateline. So that means either the moon has to be sighted throughout the whole world in 2 days, if not in 1 day. So that is the minimum and the maximum range. Now, if we look at the actual data from past 10-20 years, how the Muslim countries around the world are celebrating Ramadan and Eid, we find that this is not in 1 day or 2 days, sometimes in 3 days or 4 days. And these data are available online on various moon sighting websites, and you can check that. And this particular dates are from icoproject.org website, where we did Eid al-Fitr in that year over 4 days. So clearly, it means the 2 days out of the 4 must be wrong. So we need to find out how we can identify where the error is, and so that we can correct our mistakes.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب.
So this diagram has been explained previously by Shaykh Suleiman Ghani, and the ayat explained by Maulana Farid here, that Allah Ta'ala is saying the sun is the shining glory which emits light, and the moon is the diya, gives the reflected light. And why it is there, Allah is saying so that we can measure the time and know the number of years. So how does that happen? Supposing we didn't have computer, we didn't have watches. One rotation of the earth on its own axis gives you 24 hours. That's your day count. The moon goes round the earth 29.5 days. One rotation round the earth by the moon gives you a month count. And one rotation of that round the sun gives you a year count. So Allah Ta'ala, using this natural agent, is helping us to know the count of time. So if one day all the satellites just went into smoke and we lost timing, just by looking from one crescent moon to the next crescent moon, or one full moon to the next full moon, we will know that a month has passed, and sunset to sunset, you know a day has passed. So this is what Allah Ta'ala is explaining, that He has given us this agent for us to measure time. Now, how do we know when the month starts? In Islamic law, the month starts with the first sighting of the crescent moon. Now, the new moon conjunction time that we have mentioned a number of times is a reference point, and that's a very, very important reference point. This is not the basis of starting the month in Sharia, but it's a reference point that the moon can only be sighted after the birth of the moon. So what is the birth of the moon? As the moon is going around the earth, when it is totally opposite side of the sun, so the earth is in the middle and is on the opposite side, all the light of the sun is being reflected off the moon, as explained by the Quran, and we see a full moon. It continues its journey and gets in between the earth and the sun and comes in one line. Because the moon is on the way, none of the light can pass onto the earth, and so we see no moon, or it's the dark moon. So in your diaries, when you see new moon, this is what they mean. It's the invisible dark moon, and it's called the new moon conjunction. Now people confuse that with the visible moon, and that is important to understand. Okay? So the Islamic month starts with the hilal, with the visible moon, after the new moon birth. But the new moon mentioned in diaries, it's not the visible moon. That is called invisible moon, and in Arabic it's called waqtul iqtirab. or a new moon conjunction. So this is waqtul iqtiran here. And then after some 18-20 hours later, if the moon is above our own horizon, then we may be able to sight it. It is not necessarily the case that it is 18 hours, 20 hours, or even 30 hours old that we will be able to sight it. For example, if the first sighting has started in the southern hemisphere and we are in the northern hemisphere, even though the age of the moon may be 30 hours, but it's below horizon for us, so we will not be able to sight it. So there are a number of parameters which will determine when the moon can or cannot be sighted.
الرحمن الرحيم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم.
I will explain the phases of the moon with this diagram. So Allah Ta'ala is saying that the moon goes through stages. See, the manazil, and it returns like the weather part of the headstone. So what are the stages? These are the 28 stages of the moon that every night, from the dark moon that we saw in the previous slide, first crescent moon, and then every night it keeps growing until it is full moon on the 14th night. And then it starts decreasing again, and then, so another point to mention here is that the new crescent moon, or the hilal, is visible after sunset. But the waning crescent, at the end of the month, it is visible before sunrise in the morning. So you may be able to see the crescent moon in the evening, but if you want to see the end of the month's moon, you will have to look for it before sunrise when you're going for Fajr. Look at the eastern sky. So to look for the crescent moon, we have to look after sunset in the western horizon, but to look for the waning crescent or the moon at the end of the month, you have to look in the eastern horizon before sunrise. And if you can do that, you will be able to witness all the 27 or 28 stages of the moon throughout the month, given clear sky. So although our month starts with the hilal, if you've seen this waning crescent, say, before sunrise on one day, end of the month, and somebody in the evening say they have seen that, and either you've seen it wrong or they've seen it wrong, because there is no time for the invisible period. So every month must go through a dark phase. In Arabic, it's called mahak, new moon phase, 2.5 days. And in that period of mahak is called waqtul iqtiran, the time of conjunction, which we saw in the previous slide. So knowing the end of the month will also help us know when the next month can or cannot start. So how do we know how accurate this data is? Because all those previous slides are explaining the phases of the moon, perhaps you can only compute it. Well, a certain month in the year, the situation arises such that if it happens to be above your own horizon and they come in line, then you can see the time of conjunction during the solar eclipse. So this is when the sun, moon, and earth come in one plane, and the moon blocks out the light of the sun from the earth. So that is the solar eclipse, and that is predicted by astronomers hundreds of years in advance, and you can judge for yourself were they in error by 24 hours or 24 minutes or 24 seconds. You can know that they can predict it to accurate to the second, and they can show you live observation of that accuracy as well. So that is important to understand, that the astronomers do know the position of the moon accurate to the fraction of a second, not just by a day or 2 days. And similarly, you can have a lunar eclipse that only happens during full moon. So when the shadow of the earth falls on the moon, you get a lunar eclipse. And that is also mentioned in Hadith. At the time of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Medina, there was a eclipse, and people thought the heavens were crying because his son Ibrahim Alayhi Salam has passed away. And then he said, no, this is not the case. The sun and the moon do not eclipse because of the death or birth of someone. It is one of the signs of Allah. So solar eclipse, we do Salatul Khusuf. Salatul Khusuf, yeah, and lunar eclipse, Salatul Khusuf. So this is also a sunnah. When we know there is an eclipse coming up, we revive the sunnah of coming to the masjid and pray in congregation. And now, from an worldly point of view, what do the scientists have got to do with the accuracy of this data? Well, if they did not know the accurate position of the moon, sending a many billion-dollar rocket to this space to land on it, even if they are inaccurate by 1 degree, they will be hundreds of miles off the target. So it is also in their interest to know very precisely the position of the moon, so they can guide the rockets to land on. And they've also photographed the new moon conjunction 100 miles above the Earth and proven to be extremely accurate. So this rocket is traveling at 27,500 kilometers an hour. Need to know very precisely where it's going, otherwise everything goes in smoke. Now coming back to some basic, how do we know the position of the moon in order to sight it? Well, everybody knows a clock face or a compass. On that clock face is divided in this 12 hours, is divided in 360 degrees. So 0 degrees here, 30 degrees here, 90 degrees here, all that. And this is called azimuth, the name of those angles. Now the Qibla direction from here, from UK, is about 120 degrees azimuth. So that is 120 degrees from north. So if you get a compass here and see which way your masjid is praying, Makkah, you should see that it is 120 degrees. So that's the azimuth, that is the Qibla direction. If we want to know if somebody says, right, there are certain months in a year that the moon can be sighted from a location before any part of the world. And in UK, we get at least 1 month out of 12 where UK will be the first country to sight the moon before the whole world, if we are looking for it and the weather does not let us down. And the next one coming up is 22 February next year, and the azimuth is 260 degrees. That's where the moon will be. And no one else in the southern hemisphere or in the Middle East will be able to sight it before UK does. So how do you know where to look? This is using the compass. That is the direction we look for it. And also, similarly, if we tilt that compass sideways, and then we measure the height above the horizon using the same units of measure, these degrees, and we call that altitude. So altitude is from, say, 0 to 90 degrees here. And so if it is cloudy and you are unable to scan the whole sky, because the moon might appear for a few seconds through a break in the cloud and disappear again. But if you know precisely where to look, the chances of sighting it's much higher than if you didn't know. So knowing the altitude, how high in the sky and what direction will help us know where to look for the moon. This ayat has been explained by the Mufassirun, particularly Ibn Kathir and Imam Qurtubi and many others, that one of the interpretations is that in the night of hilal, the moon must set after the sun. By the sun and its brightness, by the moon as it follows the sun. So the moon must set after the sun. So that means there must be a lag time. And what does that mean? So this is the horizon, for example, say, and the moon is, the sun is setting down, and then moon is following it. So the moon is setting after the sun. So this is important to understand. And not only that, as Sheikh Suleiman said, because of due to the glare of the sun, there has to be minimum lag between the two. Otherwise, it will not be visible to the naked eye, because the brightness of the sun will hide it. So the moon must set after the sun. That's very, very important. it means that if the moon has set before the sun, it's impossible logically to be able to sight it, but it is also against the understanding of this Quran. Now, those people who accept unfounded news, they will say, there's some other meaning to this. But the Mufassirin have actually said that this ayat means in the night of hilal, the moon must set after the sun. And you can check the tafsir and verify that. I put in the Arabic terms here so our ulama can check that, because these parameters were invented by the Muslims in the early times. So this is called the altitude of the moon. That from the horizon to the center, this is the altitude of the moon, and from the horizon down, this is altitude of the sun. So if somebody gives you a parameter over the phone, look for the moon and the azimuth and altitude in such and such, then you should be able to know exactly what that means and be able to know where to look for the moon. Now, using some 150 years of observation data, astronomers have actually correlated the actual sighting with the position of the moon, and they have come up with some estimated figures that the age of in order for the moon to be visible or be sighted, it has to be 18 hours or more older from the time of new moon conjunction, and it has to have an angular separation called elongation away from the sun. So this is technical things that you may not want to think of it at the moment, but that's important to check whether the sighting was visible or not. And there are a couple of photos to show that you can see this moon, which is nearly 24 hours old, and how small it is thin, and the other one 30 hours old, and how small it is on there. Now, Muslim scientists have been researching these things because the Quran has motivated them to look to establish prayer times, to calculate Qibla direction, to know when the moon might be born, etc. And there are many of them. The creators of the moon has at least 24 names of Muslim scientists who have made research in that field from the 9th century until 15th century. I'll show you a quick video clips about this Muslim contribution. Came last year, I think, to Assam.
The ideas of the ancient Greeks and Romans might never have reached us had it not been for Islamic scholars and scientists who rediscovered, developed, and enriched them. And that stimulus came from the Quran, which in verse after verse calls upon mankind to examine the heavens and the earth, to reflect on creation, to look and look again. As early as the 9th century, Muslim scientists calculated the circumference of the earth, while medieval Europe hung grimly to the notion of a flat earth. Arabic numerals were developed from their Indian origins into the basis of a new arithmetic. Trigonometry, algebra, and geometry were wholly or largely Muslim inventions. Islamic medicine remained standard practice for 1,000 years.
So I hope that you will understand that these sciences developed by Muslims are for establishing prayer times and Qibla direction and moon sighting came from the direction in the Quran and Hadith, and it's not as some people would lead you to believe that they're all non-Muslim inventions. And these are some of the scholars who have tried to calculate the visibility of the moon. Now, you might ask the question, so if this was so accurate and possible, then why has this not been done hundreds of years ago? And that is because the computational power to calculate the position of the moon and the visibility was not available until in the late 80s and 90s. So that is why, although they have tried, but the margin of error was very large. But since this computational power has become accessible to the researchers in the 90s, they were now able to accurately calculate the visibility maps, which has been proven month after month. And using those information, we can now produce a map on the world, on the globe, and show you exactly when and where the moon may be sighted or not. So one of the questions you might ask is, when is Ramadan going to start? And on this slide, you have all the answers. So on 30th of July, the new moon conjunction, Waqtul Iqran, will be 1840 GMT. That's the birth of the moon. And some 20 hours later or so, it may be sighted on the following day. On that day, it will not be possible to be sighted. So even though it is born on 30th at 1860, add 3 hours to that, so that's 2140. So 2140 obviously is well past Makkah sunset, and therefore they are not going to say, right, the moon has been sighted, because in their sunset time the moon is not even born. So there is no possibility of Ramadan starting from 31st. And even if we look here on UK horizon, it will set before the sun. So as I explained in my previous slide, if the moon set before the sun, then it is not possible to be sighted. So that will be the case on that day. So on 31st, however, here it's on the edge of not possible to be sighted. But according to the Saudi calendar, it is going to be on the horizon for some 25 minutes. So they most probably will announce the month on the next day, because that is what they use for all practical purposes. So although we may not get any reliable sighting news from those places, it's probably one person in Riyadh who claims it, and they say, fine, that's good. But we should be able to get lots of reliable sighting from other parts of the world. So the likelihood of start of Ramadan, 1st August, should be united, because two different criteria just happens to coincide on that date. The situation will be different at Eid al-Fitr. You can see that the birth of the moon will be on 29th August. But it's not going to be possible to be sighted, because the map does not cover any of that. So 30th August is not possible for it to take place. But according to Qura, it's 4 minutes, the moon is following the sun by 4 minutes. Its age is 12 hours, and as I said, it's not possible to be sighted less than around 18 hours. And it's almost 0 degrees altitude. And we think you need at least 10 degrees high on the horizon for it to be possible. So it's not possible to be sighted in any of these countries. But it meets the Qura, the Saudi calendar criteria. So there is a likelihood that it's going to be a division. So people are going to do it on 2 days. And this is the reason why this will happen. Because although the Qura is for civil purposes, but when it comes to making decision for Ramadan, it seems to have a bias towards weakness. And anybody who says that they saw it and it matches that pre-calculated date, they generally accept it. Now, this week, this data is, we can backdate back to the time of Prophet ﷺ. There is a hadith when the Prophet ﷺ did Eid al-Adha, the Dhul Hijjah started. And we can see, this is a Bukhari Muslim hadith, that Friday, in the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, the Hajj was, the 9th day was so the moon was around 18 hours, and it was well over half an hour on the Makkah horizon. And remember, in that place, if you use Google Earth, it is well over 2,000 feet above sea level. So it has more better chances of being sighting than the normal height locations. So this calendar shows that using this data we can match up that the Hajj of Prophet Islam's date and that produced by the astronomy software seems to match fairly accurately. And this already has been explained by Maulana Farid here, that at the time of Prophet everybody did local sighting. So Makkah did their own sighting, Medina did their own sighting. Otherwise, we have a very accurate and precise date of the last Hajj, the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, and we have the demise of Prophet ﷺ, 12 Rabi'ul Awwal. So whichever way you compute, 30 days a month or 29 days a month, they do not match. And if they were to match, then we know Makkah date and Medina date are same. Because they don't match, we know they are different. And Fuqaha like Mullah Ali Kari has said that the reason it is different, because Medina started their Dhul Hijjah one day after Makkah. And that is why the demise of Prophet in Medina, 12th Rabiul Awwal, was based on the Medina calendar and not Makkah calendar. Now, if they wanted to synchronize the two, in the old days they still had pigeons. You can train a pigeon where its home is, take it with you, and give a message and say, go home. And it flies in a straight bird's eye direction, and it can reach faster than the fastest horse. And there was a research in, I think, last year in South Africa, and they found it was quicker to put maybe many megabytes of USB chip on a pigeon, and it can carry across the country faster than the fastest broadband connection. So if it was important to synchronize, there were methods by which they could send a fast horse rider, 9 days there is gap between the beginning of the month until the date of Hajj and things like that. But this is not found in Sirah, in the life of Islam, or in the lives of Sahaba, that they, wherever they were, they always tried to say, what date did they start in Makkah, and we should do the same. So they followed the direction of the Quran, that you should just follow the sighting of the moon from your own location. And we know that local sighting is more closer with the Sunnah than the problem created by modern telecommunication now, that we have to be synchronized with a foreign country. And following one foreign country for all months has no basis in Sharia. It is neither local sighting, neither global sighting. Right? Because you're fixing one location. You should say either we are going to follow our own sighting, or if we get a reliable sighting from any location in the world, provided it reaches us without hardship. That means by our sunset. Not we have to wait until the next morning, but by our sunset. And that means only from people who have their sunset before us. So that's because of the atmospheric condition we suffer that we have to borrow. But it has to be reliable sighting. And this was also agreed by the international scholars hosted by Muslim World League back in 1981. There was a question, that was the start of modern telecommunication, whether people should follow Makkah for their Eid al-Adha. And all the ulama have said that the ruling for starting Ramadan is by sighting of the moon, and ruling for Eid al-Adha is the same as that of the Ramadan. And I want to draw a special point here. Ramadan started from second Hijrah, right? Second Hijrah. Eid al-Adha was celebrated by Prophet ﷺ when Ramadan became obligatory. Hajj became Farz in 9th Hijrah, 7 years later. So there was no Hajj for 7 years. So Prophet Muhammad celebrated Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha from 2nd of Hijrah in Medina without anything to do with when the day of Arafat is. So the connection of both for us, we are not in Makkah, so Hajj is not applicable for us to do here. But when we are there, we're under their jurisdiction, the rule is different. But for here, we should follow what the Sharia principle is, that both Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Hajj should be according to the sighting of the moon in your own region, as practiced by Rasulullah and his companions and the Khulafa Rashidin and Tabi'in and all the early scholars. So that has the strongest basis in Sharia, and there is no proof that for all months that we should follow one fixed location. Maybe it's South Africa or Pakistan or some other countries. There is no proof found in the Islamic law to follow one fixed location. Now, this is a map which shows all the 12 lunar months visibility on one map, and it shows that the moon's first visibility is never from the same place every month. It is always different. So 1 month here, it starts first visibility here, another month here, over there, over there, over here. The color are just to distinguish the different months. So this is the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that not everybody is going to depend on one place. They will have their own. And sometimes it is winter and sometimes it is in the summer due to the lunar year shorter than the solar year, and the month rotates in around each season. So if we were to fix one location, then you have to ignore all the other sighting in the world. So that will not be according to the teaching of the Quran and Hadith. If you say, I'm going to accept sighting from one location. Now also this shows us that if we want to share moon sighting news from other places, then we'll know exactly when and where the moon will be visible, and therefore we can make contacts with those people and try to bring their sighting in order to help us make our own decision. Another point I should mention here is that if you draw a line on the equator, you will see 6 months of the year, the first visibility is on the northern hemisphere. 6 months of the year, the first visibility in the southern hemisphere. Now, a month is either 29 or 30 days. So, roughly, there are 629 days in a year and 630 days in a year. So, if we are unable to sight the moon 6 months of the year, what do you do then? Then we have to borrow it. And this 6 months that we would be able to sight, when it's in northern hemisphere, 3 would be 29 days and 3 would be 30 days. That means out of the 12 months, only 3 months of 29 days there will be. So if you say, oh, you guys try to sight moon every month, but it's only maybe 2-3 months in the whole year you sighted on the 29 days. That's not because we have been unable to sight it while the moon is there. That is because that is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created his system. But it is sunnah to look for the moon on the 29th day, and if we don't sight it, we complete the month 30 days unless we get reliable sighting from another location. This is important to understand that why the moon is not visible all the time on the UK horizon. We just blame it on the clouds and never attempt to sight it, but if we did, we would be able to sight it. And over the last few years, we have seen that people have been able to sight the youngest crescent moon, sometimes before the whole world. We have photographed it and we have posted it on the internet as well. Now, this is a point that perhaps for those people think that this knowledge of science is a knowledge of the non-Muslims. Now, in the seerah of Prophet Islam, he has not said the knowledge is a Muslim or knowledge is non-Muslim. He has said knowledge is either beneficial or not beneficial. And he prayed to Allah Ta'ala, he says, Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi. Oh Allah, give me the knowledge which benefits me. And he said, oh Allah, protect me from the knowledge which does not benefit me. So knowledge is either beneficial or not beneficial. So if the knowledge of science and technology is beneficial, which helps us to establish our prayer times, our Qibla directions, our the starting of the month accurately, to fast correctly, then it must be beneficial knowledge. And if it is, we should adopt it and accept it and use it. So anybody who says, these people have gone astray, gone on the wrong path because they're using these sciences to know when the prayer time is and when the moon is going to be sighted or not. Obviously, they have not understood the teaching of Rasulullah. And I would challenge them to come and explain why they think that this knowledge is not Islamic. Because Prophet ﷺ did not say this is un-Islamic. He said if it is beneficial, take it. So we use this technology and this knowledge, and this is done throughout the whole world. You can see, especially in the Far East, they teach these sciences not only in their schools, but also in their madrasas. And this is a compulsory subject. And the understanding between the scientist and the Muslim fuqaha is very, very close, because they understand each other, because they consider these are beneficial knowledge. And we have Sheikh Suleiman Ghani here, citing his, from Tooting Islamic Center, and they cited the 24-hour moon on that evening. And we now, when the moon is on our horizon, we are able to actually live broadcast it on the internet, and we have been doing that for the last couple of years. So York Astronomical Society, I have a lot of colleagues who are very, very keen on observing the moon, and we have a lot of ulama coming from other cities joining us. And when we sight the moon, we also live broadcast it so that other people can also see that it is possible to sight the moon on UK horizon. And I made a presentation in Abu Dhabi last year and wrote a paper on it, which is published in this book here, Astronomy in Islamic Society, Astronomy for the Islamic Society. In this book, you can read my publication paper here with all the other international scientists, how we were able to sight the moon and live broadcast and share it. So you can see that this is my laptop here, with one webcam looking at the observer, and another webcam connected onto a small telescope just to bring it closer. So this is the naked eye sighting of the hilal. And on here you can see the hilal is there, and it's being picked up and displayed there, and this is more close up. So while you are observing, we are broadcasting on the internet through mobile broadband, and you can join us observing live present if you are unable to see it on your location. And we can also have a predicted calendar which you can download from the Theological website. So in summary, what I have explained is that to look for the hilal every month is commanded in Quran and Hadith. And if the moon is not sighted in one day, it must be sighted in 2 days throughout the whole year, not 3 days, 4 days. If that is the case, there must be some mistake. So we need to be aware of that. And I've explained a few parameters, what is birth of the moon and what is the altitude and all that. So it just helps us to know when and where to sight the moon. Explain to you the visibility maps, how that helps us know which other countries might be able to sight the moon, and how the programs helps us know where to look. And we should do two things. In my humble suggestion is that A, we should try to look for the moon every month. And even we don't sight it, negative sighting report is also valuable information. So when we don't sight it, we report we couldn't sight it, as well as the positive one. And then we send all this information to our ulama. Now, in a Muslim country, the decision will be made by a court and by a judge. In a non-Muslim country, the decision is made by a group of ulama, and their decision, after they've considered all the evidences, that will become binding in the community. This is what we're hoping to achieve, inshallah, by requesting you to revive this sunnah in your own town and sending your report to our ulama. And so with practical experience of moon sighting and better understanding, I think we can resolve this confusion and disputes, and one day we'll see everybody is united one day of Eid and Ramadan, inshallah. And that's all I have to say. Where is our host? What are you going to do about questions?
Can we have a presentation first?
I'm just thinking, I think we're all very, very tired. You've just heard of over an hour and a half of programs. I'm just thinking maybe we could have 5 minutes where you could write down whatever questions you've got on moon sighting. Then I'm happy to do it. But I'm just thinking, you've heard so much for an hour and a half. Now for anything else to go in, if your mind anything like mine, nothing has got to.